What if everything your doctor told you about healing was incomplete? What if the most powerful medicine ever assembled wasn't discovered in a laboratory, wasn't patented by a pharmaceutical company, and wasn't locked behind a prescription pad, but was written down thousands of years ago in the most widely read book in human history? Most people open the Bible and see faith. What they don't see, what nobody ever told them to look for, are the meals. Specific meals. Specific combinations of specific foods that modern biochemists, cardiologists, immunologists, and gastroenterologists are now spending millions of research dollars to understand, and arriving at the same conclusions that ordinary people living in ancient Israel reached by simply paying attention to what kept them alive. Today I'm going to show you 20 biblical meals that will heal you. Not symbolically, not spiritually, though that too. Physically, at the cellular level, in your gut, your blood, your brain, your joints, and your immune system. And I need you to stay with me all the way to meal 17, because that one involves a combination of 3 ingredients that researchers at a major university are currently studying in a clinical trial for its effects on aggressive inflammation. And meal 20, the one I saved for last, isn't just a meal, it's a resurrection. A man was declared dead, he ate, and he walked out. If ancient wisdom backed by cutting-edge science is something you want delivered to you every single week, hit subscribe right now and ring that bell. Because what we're building on this channel is something the internet has never seen before. Let's eat. Meal 1, roasted lamb with bitter herbs and unleavened bread. We begin at the most consequential meal in all of human history. Not metaphorically, literally. The night everything changed. Exodus chapter 12. Egypt, a people in bondage for 430 years. God gives Moses exact instructions. Roast a lamb. Oh, over fire. Not boiled, not raw. Roasted. Eat it with bitter herbs and unleavened bread. Eat it standing up, sandals on, staff in hand. Eat it in haste. This wasn't a casual dinner. It was a survival protocol. And every element of it was chosen with precision that modern nutritional science is only now beginning to fully appreciate. Lamb roasted whole over fire preserves the full spectrum of B vitamins, particularly B12, which the Israelites, after generations of hard labor and nutritional deprivation, would have been severely depleted in. B12 deficiency doesn't just cause fatigue. It causes neurological damage, depression, cognitive decline, and immune collapse. One serving of properly roasted lamb begins reversing all of it. The bitter herbs, maror in Hebrew, traditionally identified as romaine lettuce, chicory, horseradish, and wild endive, are among the most potent liver-supporting, bile-stimulating plants in the entire botanical world. Bitter compounds trigger a cascade of digestive responses. The liver produces more bile. The gallbladder contracts. Digestive enzymes flood the stomach. A people about to undertake a physically brutal desert journey needed every digestive and metabolic system firing at full capacity. The unleavened bread, made from whole grain flour without fermentation, provided rapidly available complex carbohydrates without the bloating and digestive disruption that fermented bread can cause in people with compromised gut integrity. For a population under chronic stress, whose cortisol levels would have been chronically elevated and whose gut lining would have been compromised as a result, this was the right bread at the right moment. They ate this meal, and they walked out of Egypt. The science was in the preparation. The healing was in the eating. Meal 2, manna with morning dew. For 40 years, the Israelites ate manna every morning. 6 days a week, it appeared on the ground with the dew. Exodus 16. The people called it manna because they didn't know what it was. The word literally means, what is it? The Bible describes it as white, like coriander seed, tasting like wafers made with honey. It could be ground, baked, or boiled. It melted in the heat of the day. It couldn't be stored overnight without spoiling, except on the Sabbath when a double portion lasted 2 days fresh. For centuries, this was treated as pure miracle with no natural explanation necessary. But botanists and nutritional anthropologists have identified several candidates, including a secretion from the tamarisk tree rich in carbohydrates and minerals, and a lichen called Lecanora esculenta that still falls in powdery masses in the Sinai region after windstorms. What matters nutritionally is what the text describes: a complete, easily digestible carbohydrate source, providing sustained energy. Ground into flour and baked as flatbread with the herbs the Israelites gathered, it would have delivered complex carbohydrates, plant minerals, and fiber in a form the body could process entirely without digestive stress. The morning timing is not incidental. Chrononutrition, the science of when you eat and how timing affects metabolism, is one of the fastest growing fields in nutritional research. Eating a clean carbohydrate-rich meal in the morning, within the first 2 hours of waking, optimizes cortisol response, stabilizes blood sugar across the entire day, and supports mitochondrial function in ways that eating the same food at night does not. God told them to gather in the morning. Science is now explaining why that instruction was correct. Meal 3, lentil stew with cumin and wild herbs. Genesis 25. Esau returns from a field. He is described in Hebrew as ayif, which doesn't just mean tired. It means exhausted to the point of death. His body is in genuine physiological crisis. and Jacob has a pot of red lentil stew on the fire. The transaction that follows has been called the worst trade in history. Esau sells his birthright for a bowl of soup. But here is what every Sunday school teacher forgot to mention. Esau was a hunter. He understood food. He understood what his body needed. And what his body needed in that moment was exactly what was in that pot. Red lentils are among the most nutritionally complete plant foods on the planet. One cooked cup delivers 18 grams of complete plant protein, 16 grams of fiber and concentrated iron, folate, zinc, magnesium, and potassium. When a body is in the kind of exhaustion Esau was experiencing, these aren't just nutrients. They are the specific compounds depleted by extreme physical exertion that must be replaced before the body can begin recovery. The cumin in that stew wasn't decoration. Cuminaldehyde, the active compound in cumin, stimulates digestive enzymes, accelerates gastric emptying, and improves the bioavailability of iron and zinc from the lentils by up to 30%. For a man whose muscles were screaming and whose blood sugar had crashed, this combination was clinical. Esau didn't make a foolish trade. He made the only trade his biology was capable of making in that moment. And what he traded it for was exactly what he needed to survive the next 24 hours. The real question isn't why Esau traded his birthright. The real question is why you're not eating lentil stew every single week. Meal 4, barley loaves with fresh olive oil. John chapter 6. A crowd of 5,000 people. 1 boy, 5 barley loaves, 2 fish, and a miracle that feeds everyone with 12 baskets left over. Most people focus on the miracle. Almost nobody asks why barley. Why not wheat? Why not the more prestigious grain? Because barley was a grain of real people doing real work. And it turns out the grain of real people doing real work is the most cardiovascularly protective cereal grain ever studied. Barley contains more beta-glucan-soluble fiber than any other grain on earth, including oats, which already carry an FDA heart health claim. Beta-glucan forms a viscous gel in the digestive tract that physically traps cholesterol-carrying bile acids and removes them from the body. It slows glucose absorption so completely that a barley-based meal produces a blood sugar response roughly half that of an equivalent wheat meal. It feeds bifidobacterium and lactobacillus strains in the colon that produce butyrate, a short-chain fatty acid that reduces colon cancer risk and strengthens the gut barrier. Dip those barley loaves in fresh cold-pressed olive oil the way people at ancient tables would have done without thinking twice, and you add oleocanthal, the polyphenol that reduces inflammatory signaling with the same mechanism as ibuprofen, without the gastric damage, without the kidney strain, without any side effect beyond better health. 5,000 people fed. Every single one of them received a cardiovascular and metabolic intervention they didn't know they were getting. Meal 5, grilled fish from the Sea of Galilee. John 21. Before dawn, a charcoal fire on the shore. The smell of fish cooking over open flame. The disciples coming in from a night of fishing with empty nets. And Jesus standing on the beach, already cooking breakfast. This moment is 3 verses long in the text. The disciples don't immediately recognize who is standing on the shore. They see the fire, they smell the fish, they come ashore, and then they know. The fish of the Sea of Galilee, tilapia, sardines, and the species called mush by local fishermen are among the most omega-3 dense freshwater fish available. EPA and DHA, the essential fatty acids a human body cannot synthesize from any plant source, must come from food. They are the structural components of every cell membrane in the brain. DHA alone makes up 97% of the omega-3 fatty acids in brain tissue. EPA is the primary anti-inflammatory regulator in the cardiovascular system. The research on omega-3 consumption is among the most robust in all of nutritional science. Regular fatty fish consumption reduces all-cause mortality, reduces cardiovascular events, reduces rates of clinical depression, and slows cognitive decline. Not marginally, dramatically. Cooked over charcoal with no processing, no batter, no seed oil. The preparation preserved the omega-3 content entirely. The disciples who ate this breakfast several mornings a week weren't eating because they understood neurological protection. They were eating because they were hungry. But what it was doing to their brains and hearts was something researchers in 2024 are spending millions of dollars to replicate in supplement form. You can replicate it for $4 at a fish market, the way it was always meant to be eaten. Meal 6, raw honey with goat milk yogurt. Exodus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, Joshua. The phrase appears over and over. A land flowing with milk and honey. It was not poetry. It was a nutritional promise. And the specific nature of both substances matters more than most people have ever been told. The milk wasn't cow's milk, not the pasteurized, homogenized, vitamin-fortified product in your refrigerator. It was goat's milk, fermented into yogurt the way people across the ancient Middle East had done for thousands of years before anyone understood what bacteria were. Goat's milk contains A2 casein rather than the A1 casein found in most commercial dairy. Multiple research studies indicate A2 casein produces significantly less inflammatory response in the gut lining and is better tolerated by people who react poorly to conventional dairy. The fat globules are smaller. The protein structure is closer to human breast milk than cow's milk is. Fermented into yogurt, it becomes a living probiotic food dense with lactobacillus and bifidobacterium strains that colonize the gut, train the immune system, and produce short-chain fatty acids that reduce intestinal inflammation. Now stir in raw, unfiltered honey, not the clear syrup in a plastic bottle. Real honey harvested and bottled without heating, containing active enzymes, defensin-1 protein, and hydrogen peroxide-releasing compounds that give it clinically documented antimicrobial activity. The World Health Organization recognizes raw honey as a legitimate treatment for wound infections. Its combination with live probiotic cultures creates something that modern functional medicine practitioners are now recommending as a gut restoration protocol. The promised land wasn't promising luxury. It was promising medicine, twice daily in a bowl. Meal 7, fig cake with almond meal. 2 Kings 20. King Hezekiah is dying. The prophet Isaiah arrives. He doesn't just pray over the king. He orders a poultice of figs pressed directly onto the infected wound, and Hezekiah recovers. For centuries, this was read as supernatural intervention, with a fig as an incidental prop. But ethnobotanists and pharmacologists have spent considerable time studying what Isaiah actually ordered. Figs contain physin, a proteolytic enzyme that breaks down necrotic tissue and accelerates wound healing. They contain benzaldehyde with documented antimicrobial activity and sorolin with well-established antibacterial properties. Fresh fig latex has been shown in laboratory studies to inhibit the growth of staphylococcus, the most common cause of deep skin infections in any era. Isaiah didn't reach for figs by accident. He reached for the most potent topical antimicrobial available in his entire medicine cabinet. Eaten as a meal, figs become something else entirely, one of the most mineral-dense fruits available. Extraordinarily rich in pectin, a soluble fiber that specifically nourishes Bifidobacterium longum, one of the most studied and beneficial strains in human gut microbiome research. Rich in magnesium for hundreds of enzymatic reactions. Rich in potassium, calcium, and B vitamins. Combine them with almond meal, ground raw almonds, and you add vitamin E in its most bioavailable form, alpha-tocopherol, the fat-soluble antioxidant that protects every cell membrane in the body from oxidative damage. Clinical trials show regular almond consumption lowers LDL cholesterol, improves insulin sensitivity, and increases gut microbiome diversity. This is the meal that healed the king. It can work on whatever is slowly breaking down in you. Meal 8, pomegranate and grain bowl. Solomon's temple had pomegranates carved into its pillars. The high priest's ceremonial robe was adorned with pomegranate decorations made of blue, purple, and scarlet yarn. This fruit was so central to the culture that it was built into the most sacred architecture in the world. And modern antioxidant research is still trying to fully understand why. Pomegranates contain punicalagin, a compound found almost nowhere else in nature. In the gut, punicalagin breaks down into compounds called urolithins. Urolithin A in particular has been shown in clinical research to activate mitophagy, the cellular process by which damaged mitochondria are cleared and replaced with healthy ones. This is one of the primary mechanisms of cellular aging. Urolithins slow it down. Clinical trials with pomegranate juice have demonstrated measurable reductions in blood pressure, LDL oxidation, arterial inflammation, and CRP, the primary blood marker of systemic inflammation. The polyphenol concentration outranks red wine, green tea, and blueberries by a significant margin. Build into a grain bowl with whole barley as the base and scattered pomegranate seeds throughout. Dressed with olive oil and fresh mint, you combine the beta-glucan cholesterol protection of barley with the mitochondrial support of urolithins with the anti-inflammatory baseline of real olive oil. The ancient world built temples around this fruit. Modern oncology is studying it for applications in cancer prevention, and you can put it in a bowl for breakfast. Meal 9, garlic and onion lamb stew. Numbers 11. The Israelites are in the wilderness. God is providing manna. And the people are weeping, not from pain, from longing. They are crying for food they left behind in Egypt, and they name specific foods: fish, cucumbers, melons, leeks, onions, and garlic. They wept for garlic and onions. Think about what that tells you. These weren't flavoring agents. They were foods people depended on so completely that their absence felt like grief. Garlic contains allicin, created the moment a clove is crushed or chopped when the enzyme alliinase contacts the compound alliin. Allicin is a broad-spectrum antimicrobial active against bacteria, viruses, fungi, and parasites. Clinical trials consistently show that people who consume garlic regularly experience colds and flu with 63% less frequency than those who don't. Regular garlic consumption lowers blood pressure by measurable amounts, reduces LDL cholesterol, and has documented liver protective effects that modern hepatologists find genuinely remarkable. Onions are one of the richest dietary sources of quercetin, a polyphenol with powerful anti-inflammatory and antihistamine activity. They're dense in inulin-type fructans, prebiotic fibers that specifically nourish the beneficial bacteria associated with healthy aging and immune resilience. Together in a slow-cooked lamb stew, the garlic and onions don't just flavor the meat. They transform the entire meal into an immune-modulating, anti-inflammatory, cardiovascular protective system. Slow cooking the lamb with the garlic and onions for 3 to 4 hours allows the flavors and compounds to integrate into fat of meat, creating a bioavailability for the fat-soluble compounds that eating them separately never achieves. The Israelites wept for this. Your immune system would too, if it could talk. Meal 10, chickpea and herb salad with wine vinegar. Chickpeas have been cultivated in the Fertile Crescent for at least 10,000 years. They appear in archaeological sites predating written language. They fed the builders of civilizations that shaped everything that came after. And modern epidemiology has identified one single dietary variable that predicts healthy aging and longevity more consistently than any other across diverse populations worldwide. Not a supplement, not a pharmaceutical. Regular legume consumption. Beans, eaten consistently over years. Chickpeas are extraordinarily high in plant protein and fiber with a glycemic index so low they produce almost no measurable blood sugar response despite their carbohydrate content. Their resistant starch feeds a colonic bacteria that produce butyrate, the short-chain fatty acid that maintains the gut mucosal lining, reduces colon cancer risk, and through the gut-brain axis, influences mood and cognitive function. Dressed with genuine cold-pressed olive oil and wine vinegar, the traditional preparation across ancient Israel. You add oleocanthal for inflammation reduction alongside acetic acid from the vinegar that has been shown in multiple studies to significantly improve insulin sensitivity and reduce post-meal blood glucose response. Add fresh herbs, hyssop, mint, coriander, and you layer antimicrobial and digestive compounds over everything. This salad was eaten at room temperature at tables across the ancient Middle East for 10,000 years. Not because people were limited in their options, because it worked. And foods that work for 10,000 years don't need a marketing campaign. Before we get into the second half of this list, I want to address something. Because a lot of you are going to watch this and want to start making these meals, and then you're going to go to the grocery store, and you're going to buy what's available. And what's available is not what we're talking about. The olive oil on most supermarket shelves has been independently tested and found to be adulterated with cheap, refined seed oils. Real extra virgin cold-pressed olive oil should be opaque, slightly green gold, and sharp enough to make you cough slightly at the back of the throat. That's the oleocanthal working. If it doesn't do that, it isn't medicinal. Commercial honey is heated to above 70 degrees Celsius during processing, which destroys the enzymes, degrades the defensin-1 protein, and eliminates the antimicrobial activity entirely. What you're left with is flavored sugar syrup. Not healing, not medicine. I've done the research. I found the sources I actually trust for raw honey, genuine cold-pressed olive oil, ancient grain flours, and heirloom seeds if you want to grow any of these yourself. Everything is linked below. Your results will depend entirely on the quality of what you use. Let's keep going. Meal 11, roasted root vegetables with raw honey glaze. Carrots, beets, turnips, parsnips. The agricultural staples of the ancient Middle East. Roasted in clay ovens until they caramelized and sweetened. Finished with raw honey and aromatic herbs. It sounds simple. The biochemistry is not. Root vegetables are extraordinary sources of beta-carotene and mixed carotenoids that the body converts to vitamin A. Vitamin A is not optional. It is the essential compound for the integrity of mucosal membranes, the moist epithelial linings of the nose, throat, lungs, and digestive tract that represent the body's first line of defense against every airborne and ingested pathogen. When vitamin A is depleted, those membranes thin. Pathogens that would normally be trapped and expelled get through. The immune system goes from an impenetrable wall to a damaged fence. Roasting concentrates these carotenoids while breaking down the cellular walls that would otherwise limit their absorption. The honey glaze isn't just sweetener. Raw honey's fructose composition slows its own glycemic impact, while its antimicrobial compounds add another layer of protection to every surface they contact in the digestive tract. This was a side dish at ancient tables. It was quietly doing more for immune function than most modern supplement protocols. Meal 12, sourdough flatbread with olive oil and herb dip. The Bible references olive oil 140 times. 140. It was food, fuel, sacred anointing substance, and wound dressing simultaneously. When the Good Samaritan found the beaten man on the road to Jericho, the first thing he poured on the wounds was oil and wine. This is described as obvious, self-evident. Of course you pour oil on a wound. Modern wound care specialists know why. Oleocanthal reduces inflammatory signaling at the wound site. Squalene in olive oil accelerates tissue regeneration. The polyphenol content creates an antimicrobial barrier. They didn't know any of that. They just knew it worked. Flatbread made from ancient grain, einkorn or emmer wheat, slow fermented as sourdough over 12 to 24 hours, breaks down the phytic acid that blocks mineral absorption and predigests the gluten proteins in ways that make it tolerable to people who react to modern wheat. The fermentation process produces beneficial organic acids that lower the glycemic index of the bread significantly. Dip it in olive oil mixed with hyssop, cumin, and wild thyme. The herbs add antimicrobial thymol, digestive cuminaldehyde, and the saponins in hyssop that have been shown to support respiratory health and reduce mucus viscosity. This was daily bread, not special occasion food. The prophets ate this every morning, and their daily bread was doing more for their health than most people's carefully curated supplement stacks. Meal 13, grape, goat cheese, and olive plate. I told you at the beginning this one was coming. And here is exactly why immunologists are paying attention. Grapes appear throughout Scripture with a weight that goes beyond agriculture. The vine is one of the dominant metaphors of the entire New Testament. Noah planted a vineyard as his first act after flood. The land of Canaan is confirmed as fertile and good when the spies return carrying a single cluster of grapes, so large it takes 2 men to carry on a pole between them. Numbers 13. Fresh grapes eaten with their skins contain resveratrol, quercetin, and anthocyanins. Resveratrol activates a family of proteins called sirtuins, specifically SIRT1 and SIRT3, which regulate cellular repair, mitochondrial biogenesis, and the suppression of inflammatory gene expression. Researchers studying caloric restriction and longevity keep arriving at these same pathways. Resveratrol activates them through a completely different mechanism, without starving. Now pair fresh grapes with fresh goat cheese, which is fermented goat's milk concentrated into a food dense with live probiotic cultures, and add a handful of whole olives. Researchers at 2 separate institutions are currently studying the specific combination, the interaction between resveratrol from the grapes and the live bacterial strains on the fermented cheese, for its effects on gut microbiome diversification and systemic immune response. The preliminary findings suggest a synergistic effect that neither food produces independently. The herbs add antimicrobial compounds. The olives add oleocanthal. This plate takes 4 minutes to assemble. It was a common afternoon meal at ancient tables, and it might be the most immunologically powerful 4-minute meal available to any human being on the planet right now. Meal 14, slow-cooked bean and vegetable stew. Fava beans, lentils, chickpeas. Mixed together in a heavy clay pot with onions, garlic, leeks, cumin, coriander, and enough water to cook low and slow for 3 hours. Finish with olive oil. This is the food that built civilization, not metaphorically. The agricultural revolution in the Fertile Crescent was driven, in significant part, by the cultivation of legumes alongside grains. The combination of grain protein and legume protein produces all 9 essential amino acids in ratios that support muscle maintenance, immune function, and neurological health. Together, they are nutritionally complete in ways neither is alone. Modern epidemiology's most consistent finding across the most diverse populations ever studied, from Okinawa to Sardinia to the Nicoya Peninsula to Ikaria, the places where people reliably live past 100 in good health, is that they all eat legumes daily. Every single one of them. Different cultures, different languages, different religions, different climates. One common denominator: beans. The prebiotic fiber in this stew feeds colonic bacteria that produce short-chain fatty acids. Those short-chain fatty acids reduce systemic inflammation, strengthen the gut barrier, lower cholesterol, improve insulin sensitivity, and through the gut-brain axis, reduce rates of depression and anxiety. A bowl of bean stew is not just feeding you. It is feeding the ecosystem inside you that runs your immune system, your mood, and your metabolic health. The people who ate this weren't tracking macros. They were just eating what kept them going. And it turns out that was exactly enough. Meal 15, roasted eggplant with raw garlic and olive oil. Eggplant doesn't have a starring scriptural moment. No miracle, no vision, no prophet ordered it on a wound. It was simply always there, cultivated throughout the ancient Near East, roasted over open fire in every kitchen that had access to it. What it lacks in biblical drama, it more than compensates for in neuroscience. Eggplant skin contains nazenin, an anthocyanin that has been identified as one of the most potent free radical scavengers in the plant world. Nazenin specifically crosses the blood-brain barrier and protects the phospholipid membranes of brain cells from oxidative damage, the same oxidative damage that accumulates over decades and is increasingly linked to cognitive decline and neurodegenerative disease. Roast the eggplant whole over an open flame until the skin chars and the interior collapses. Then mash the interior with raw crushed garlic, not cooked garlic. Raw, because allicin, garlic's primary antimicrobial compound, is volatile. It degrades with heat. Adding freshly crushed garlic to warm roasted eggplant rather than cooking it and releases maximum antimicrobial activity into every bite. Pour over cold-pressed olive oil. The fat makes the nazenin bioavailable. Without fat, it passes through unabsorbed. Add cumin and coriander. This is ancient baba ganoush. It was functional medicine 1,000 years before that term existed, and your brain would be better for eating it twice a week. Meal 16, cucumber, mint, and yogurt bowl. Numbers 11 again. The list of foods the Israelites mourned in the wilderness: garlic, onions, leeks, fish, and cucumbers. They wept for cucumbers. In a climate where summer temperatures regularly exceed 40 degrees Celsius, where water sources were uncertain, and heat exhaustion was a genuine daily threat, cucumbers were not just food. They were medicine. They were survival technology. Cucumbers are 96% water. They were hydration in solid form. In a desert climate, eating cucumbers was a more reliable way to achieve cellular hydration than drinking water, because the water in cucumbers is bound to soluble fiber that slows its absorption and extends its hydrating effect across hours rather than minutes. They contain cucurbitacins with anti-inflammatory properties and silica that supports connective tissue integrity, joint health, and skin structure. They're a significant source of vitamin K for bone metabolism. Combine sliced cucumbers with cold-fermented goat's milk yogurt and fresh mint. Mint contains menthol, which activates cold-sensitive TRPM8 receptors in the mouth, throat, and stomach, triggering a cascade of relaxation responses in the smooth muscle of the digestive tract. It is a clinically proven antispasmodic. The cooling sensation isn't just pleasant. It is physiologically real and therapeutically meaningful. This is the meal the wilderness demanded. Cooling, hydrating, probiotic, anti-inflammatory. The body in heat stress asked for exactly this. And the people who lived in that climate built it into their daily food culture because their bodies told them to. Meal 17, date walnut and pomegranate breakfast bowl. This is the one I told you about at the beginning. The combination that researchers are currently studying in a clinical trial. Dates have been the desert survival food for thousands of years. They appear in scripture, in the Quran, in every ancient text touching the civilizations of the ancient Near East. Desert traders carried them like currency. Soldiers on campaign depended on them. The city of Jericho was called the City of Palms. Dates provide glucose and fructose for rapid, reliable energy, packaged with fiber that slows the absorption and prevents a spike, alongside magnesium, potassium, copper, manganese, and B vitamins. Multiple clinical trials have confirmed benefits for iron absorption and bone density. Studies show women who consume dates in the final weeks of pregnancy have measurably faster and easier deliveries. Walnuts are the most omega-3 rich tree nut available. Their yellow content converts partially to EPA and DHA. They contain elagitannins and the gut convert to urolithins, the same compounds from pomegranate. They provide vitamin E, magnesium, and prebiotic fiber. And pomegranate seeds scattered to the bowl bring pinecollagen, anthocyanins, and their extraordinary antioxidant concentration. The clinical trial currently underway is examining the interaction between the elagitannins from both walnuts and pomegranates and the prebiotic fiber from the dates in their combined effect on urolithin production and mitochondrial function. The preliminary hypothesis is that the combination produces urolithin levels that neither food achieves independently. The ancient world didn't need a clinical trial. They just ate all three together because they all grew in the same region and tasted extraordinary in the same bowl. And their mitochondria were apparently paying very close attention. Meal 18, herb broth with ancient grains and wild greens. This meal has no single scripture reference because it has hundreds. It is woven into the background of almost every narrative in the Old and New Testament. Travelers eating before a journey. Widows with almost nothing left. The simple daily meal of the poor. Bone broth made from lamb or goat bones, slow simmer for 12 to 24 hours. Develops extraordinarily high concentrations of glycine, proline, and hydroxyproline. The amino acids are the primary structural components of collagen. Collagen is not just a skin supplement. It is a structural matrix of every joint, every blood vessel wall, every organ lining in the human body. Its degradation is one of the primary mechanisms of aging. Add whole einkorn or emmer wheat. The ancient varieties before modern hybridization stripped away much of their nutritional density. Add whatever wild greens were available, dandelion, chicory, purslane, wild endive, all of which are more micronutrient dense than any cultivated green available in a modern supermarket. Add fresh garlic, cumin, coriander, and finish with olive oil. Purslane, which grows as a weed throughout the ancient Near East, contains more omega-3 fatty acids than any other plant on earth. It was gathered freely by anyone who walked through a field. It was the omega-3 source of people who didn't live near a coast. This is a meal of ordinary days. The meal of people with very little, eating what was available, and receiving in that simplicity a depth of nutrition that modern food science is still working to fully map. Meal 19, barley and fig morning bowl with goat milk yogurt. The first meal of the day in the ancient world was not elaborate. It was not Instagram-worthy. It was functional, dense, designed to carry a person through 4 to 6 hours of physical labor without blood sugar disruption. Cooked whole barley, its full beta-glucan content intact, provides the most sustained, glycemically stable energy of any grain tested in modern research. Eating beta-glucan at breakfast has been specifically shown to reduce blood sugar response not just at breakfast, but at lunch and dinner on the same day. This is called the second meal effect. The fiber you eat in the morning changes how your body handles every carbohydrate you eat for the rest of the day. Fresh or dried figs layered on top provide pectin that specifically feeds Bifidobacterium longum. They add magnesium for the hundreds of enzymatic reactions that begin when your body wakes. They add calcium in concentrations comparable to dairy. A spoonful of raw honey adds enzymes that enhance mineral bioavailability from figs. The natural fructose-glucose ratio of raw honey actually blunts its own glycemic impact through a complex that requires digestion rather than immediate absorption. Goat milk yogurt alongside introduces live probiotic cultures that will colonize the gut environment prepared by the prebiotic fibers throughout the rest of the day. This isn't just breakfast. It is the metabolic and microbial setup for every hour that follows. Nutrition is now confirming what the ancient world practiced by necessity. The first meal determines the quality of all the meals that come after it. 20 meals. Thousands of years of accumulated observation. Generations of people paying closer attention to their bodies than most of us ever will, and building their entire food culture around what worked, what healed, what sustained, what kept children alive and elders strong, and workers capable of building things that have outlasted every civilization since. They didn't have clinical trials. They had something more durable. Centuries of unbroken feedback from their own bodies. And they wrote it down in a book that has never gone out of print. The people who ate these meals were not primitive. They were profoundly attentive. And they were right about almost everything. Before you go, quality is not optional. The difference between raw honeycomb and grocery store honey is the difference between medicine and candy. The difference between genuine cold-pressed olive oil and the adulterated product on most shelves is the difference between anti-inflammatory and inflammatory. I've linked everything I actually trust and use in the description below. Drop a comment and tell me which meal you're making first. I read every single one. If you haven't subscribed to this channel yet, hit that button now and ring the bell. We are just getting started, and you do not want to miss what's coming next. Go eat something real.